Oh, boy. Cool if I start, Kev? Yeah? All right. I guess we'll start because we got an hour and a half. I'd like to leave some time at the end for some chat, some conversation. But Kevin asked me to kind of speak about travel as an artist. So I also want to speak a little bit about grant writing. But we're going to deep dive into that when you have Dennis. Normally I give that chat, but this will be a bit of an overview and just kind of like a chat about what it's looked like for me to be able to travel, and hopefully I can inspire you. So it's called Fund the Journey, Grow the Artist, using grants, residencies, and global experiences to build a sustainable art practice. Bit about myself, there's some socials there. Here in Calgary, I've been a dance instructor for 11 years. That moved me into filmmaking. I have a creative studio now that I run, and there's filmmaking, there's editing, coloring. Worked on a lot of short films in the past 5 years for different arts organizations, some film festivals. Yeah. It's a practice that I built through movement, travel, community engagement, which I'm going to talk a little bit about, and just kind of saying yes. So grants, they're not just money, but they're permission. It's permission to go, permission to grow, permission to bring something back. And that's a really important element that we're going to chat about that I really like to invest in. Every grant is an invitation to kind of step beyond what you are currently, the current boundaries, and then come back transformed. So where's the money? Where can we find the money? I'm actually going to ask a question. Where can we find money here? Does anybody know about some of the granting bodies? Yeah. Rosa Foundation, yeah, that's a great space. Rosa Foundation, there's a lot of resources there, not only for like money, but like how to like figure out the administrative side of being an artist as well. Anyone else? Anyone know about the granting bodies here? Ish? There's some of you. We'll get into it right now. Let's go. So there's Calgary Arts Development. This is our municipal grant body. It's going to fund individual artist grants. That's you. Project-based grants, so if you have a project or you have a group of people, and professional development. I'm going to share some examples of some of the professional development that I've been able to do, and I'll chat with you about where some of that money came from. There's multiple deadlines a year, and they're kind of shifting things all the time. Like right now, they've got micro grants, I think about $5,000, and you can apply twice a year, but you can only get it once a year. And then they've got bigger individual project grants, $10,000. We've got Alberta Foundation for the Arts. Actually, you know what? Let's just take a little moment. If you haven't seen it, let's take a look at Kata's website. We jump on. This is a great place. Classified ads over here on the top right. If you're looking for a job in the arts, this is a great place to look. There's all sorts of different opportunities there, but we're going to look at grant investment programs. And you can kind of jump in, how to apply, how to log in, all that stuff. I guess I could log in and maybe show you a little bit. Let's see if it remembers. Yes. So you're going to log in and you're going to have to build out a profile for yourself. And we're going to chat a bit about that, what it looks like, what kind of resources you want to have to build yourself a profile. And then it's going to say open opportunities. And looks like I've got an open opportunity. I haven't looked because I'm not really writing grants this year. I'm sitting on grant boards. But this is the portal. And this is where you can come in to kind of get some information. You can poke around, kind of look at what's up, see what's available. So Calgary Arts Development, in my opinion, is one of like the most curated, and they've really thought about what an artist needs, how to build this portal so that it's easy to jump in, easy to access, easy to get feedback. They hold like town halls. So if you're looking for information on how to access grants, how to write a grant, how to make a good grant, they're going to give you that information. So especially as first-time grant writers, take advantage of those things. All right. Alberta Foundation for the Arts. This is our provincial granting system. A little bit more archaic, so like old school, but they've got a bunch of different funding. They're going to fund film projects, dance projects, et cetera, et cetera. So Calgary Arts Development, Alberta Foundation for the Arts. At the end of this, anyone who's kind of here, you can either hit me up or you can reach out to Kevin, and I'll give you a list of all these links. There's going to be a few more to come throughout the presentation. And then we have our national granting body, which is Canada Council for the Arts. So this is larger grants, longer timelines. There's key programs to explore, like explore and create. That's kind of like the genesis of your projects. Digital now, different kinds of digital projects. Touring and outreach. So touring, this is like kind of what I want to draw your attention to, because some of these bigger grants require that you've achieved grants from other bodies, that you have a kind of practice going already. But the touring and outreach grants, there's travel grants. And these ones are fantastic. You can write them any time of the year, and you kind of hear 6 months later. And you can apply for things like, last year I applied to go to Portugal. I went to Portugal to dance in a house battle and to connect with people that I had met in Europe, to build like a cohort and a network for things that I want to do out there and things that I want to bring back here. So I asked for a certain amount of money. They didn't give me the full amount, but they gave me some money. So I got home and I wasn't expecting it. I had some money. I was like, oh, sweet. That really helps. Let me take that off the credit card. And the travel grant is fantastic because it's just like, you can pay for things like your travel and accommodations, but it won't cover things like tuition or like the fees that I had to pay to go to the battles, those kinds of things. Those are different kinds of grants. But the travel is like all the travel and accommodations, bus, train, that kind of stuff. That's going to be from the travel grants. And I really like it because they're just always open. So practical tips for applying. You want to build a grants calendar. You want to know when deadlines are coming up. You look at your calendar and you're like, all right, I want to start to get some of these grants ready. You want to keep a living artist statement, where you're at with your career, where you want to go, what you're interested in, what's inspired you, and how you're inspiring your community. All right. Sometimes it's easy to kind of get lost in just what you want to do for yourself, your own professional development, and that's really important. But it becomes more important when you've been inspired as an artist to start to understand how you can reflect that back to the community and bring people along with you. Tracking your expenses, keep your receipts, every single meal, all the traveling, the bus tickets. I mean, that's just generally in life, but especially when you're on travel grants, you need to take care of this stuff, because at the end of your grant, you need to report your expenses. If it goes over or under, that kind of stuff. Document everything, and the last point is that rejections are data. It's okay to get rejected. I've been rejected many times. I've been successful many times. Just apply again, use it as data. And sometimes it's just like a lot of people applying for grants, so that's it. So the world is your studio, international art residencies. First of all, what is a residency? I was kind of chatting earlier with a homie. A residency is just dedicated time and space to make work, to gain access to new communities, mentors, and peers. You can go for 2 weeks to 6 months to a year. Some are free, some have fees. Grants can cover both, but so can income. All right. the most steady stream of money that you're going to get to fund yourself is income. You know where it's coming from. You know that you can always get it. Grants are kind of a big maybe. It's really nice to get that grant, but if you're going to put all of your eggs into the grants basket and you don't get your grants, and that means you don't get to do your thing, that kind of sucks. So try to plan to be able to like self-fund some of that stuff. And then if you get the grant, oh man, now you're golden. Like now you can just like have some fun. So as I said, I'll share some of these links with you. But for example, like we'll hop in. So like, where can you go? Where are some of these grants, or where are some of these residencies? So residencies are all over the world, and I'm going to share some of my experiences with those. But you can literally go to a castle that's just empty, and they're just trying to give a room out to an artist that like wants to explore this thing they've been interested in for 6 months. And they're going to give you a stipend as long as you can show that you have some funding to bring. So you can get your application in and they say yes, then you send that to Canada Council or Calgary Arts Development and say, hey, I need some funds to go fly out there and for some money for some food and stuff like that. You can spend 6 months literally on the coast side, living like a king in a castle, you know, developing an art project. And I did shoot a film at a castle, and we'll take a look at that later. So there's tons of stuff. You can look at residencies, artisan residencies, open calls, and they're all over the world. And so this site is like really huge. So these things exist. I don't want to dive deep, but this is just something I kind of want to show you. There's a master directory called Resident Artist. And it's in Europe, and it's not secure, so it loads slow. But there's news, events, open call. Let's just take a look. Let's take a peek and see what residencies is showing us. Okay, it shows us a map. And so we can kind of see in different areas, man, there's a lot of residencies happening in these places. You know, like click in, like maybe I want to go to the south of Greece. Let's take a look. Okay. Cyclitic Arts looks kind of fire. Looks kind of fire, you know? Like I could like cool out and like do my thing here, maybe put together a team of 3 people. We all want to go. I write in a filmmaker. I write in another artist. I have myself, and the 3 of us have a project in mind. We have a really clear description, and we have like a roadmap of how we want to create it and how we want to bring it back home, and we want to share it with the community. And that's the project, you know, like take a look at this site, kind of look around. A lot of them do cost like maybe 40 euros to like apply. Word of mouth is also a great way. If there's people in your community that have gone somewhere and experienced something and people can vouch for that, that's a really great way as well. But just to kind of look at some of the possibilities that are available, these sites are really dope. So what it actually looks like, this is where I'm going to kind of share some of the things that I've done. It's a personal timeline of grants, residencies, international experiences that have shaped my artistic practice across, I guess, nearly 2 decades of movement, film, and community building. So 2007, I went to South Africa. I was in high school at the time. I skipped my high school graduation. I was hanging out with a group of Christians, and they were like, yo, we want to bring you and hang out with you to South Africa. So I decided to go. I worked at a place called the Seed of Hope. It was an after-school program. It was in a township. It was really dangerous, and it was the first time I had ever left Calgary. Culture shock as a gift, not as disruption. So South Africa, at that time when I went, the AIDS rate was 50%. So 50% of people had AIDS, and everyone had been devastated by that. It killed an entire generation of leaders and mentors. And there's also some really dark things that are happening there in terms of medicine, in terms of witch doctors and stuff like that, about fake cures for AIDS that really damaged the community. And so it helped me to understand things a little bit differently. When I was coming over from Canada, I had a different set of values. And when I left, things like materialism started to fade away. What really surprised me was that despite all of the hardship that was happening in South Africa, they had more joy than me. They were really tight-knit as a community, and they supported each other in that way. I went to a men's choir at a church, and I learned to sing and was in like a kind of brotherhood there. And so it really shifted my perspective on what was valuable to me in life when I came back. So let's see if I have this still open here. Nope, that ain't it. Yeah, there we go. So I'll share just a couple photos. Why not? I had dreadlocks back then. And you can kind of see like through these photos, oh my God, I was literally 5. So this is Jordan and this is Alana, and they brought me out there. And it was the first time that I ever went to a space that automatically people knew that I was half black. You know, like, and because of that, I was treated differently out there. We were approached on the street by a group of people that had like a bunch of weapons, like literally bat with nails in it. And I spoke a little bit of Zulu at the time because Jordan and Alana had taught me, and they lived there for 6 months with their family. And so they saw that I was hanging out with white people, and they approached me, and they were like, yo, what's going on with these white people? And I'm like, yo, we're just cooling, like we're just walking. For whatever reason, they left us alone. Like, it was really wild. So there's something interesting about traveling. If I had acted like a tourist, we might have got jumped. So there's something about when you're traveling, not looking like an absolute tourist, man. You will get preyed on. You'll get jumped. Like if you're like walking around with a big backpack, like head on a swivel, like looking at the phone, like pulling out a map, like dude, it's like rob me, please, you know? We were driving down the street one day and people behind us were like, me, like freaking out, and they stopped us and they made us turn around. In the paper on the next day, that street, you drive down it, you get blocked in, barricaded by other cars. They don't ask questions. They just queue you to take your vehicle. You know, there's places in the world where things are really different. And at this time, I was really blessed to be guarded and protected. So, you know, keep your blessings up. Those things will follow you. So this after school center was dope. In grade 6, you know, I started playing with computers. Computers came out. So I was fixing computers here. I was cleaning up like squatting, like residencies where squatters had come and there's poop on the walls. There's all sorts of stuff. We were cleaning it up to turn into residencies. So this was kind of the beginning of my journey. And then this is Tabo. We brought him back. And I love this idea of bringing things back. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So that was a little bit of South Africa. It wasn't so much art, but it was really about shifting my perspective. And so travels shift your perspective. And as an artist, you're always kind of filtering your experiences into something how you can express that creatively, right? So all of these things are shifting that. So afterwards, because I was with these faith-based people and I was so touched by like how people that have faith had this happiness and joy despite hardship, I actually started digging deeper and I started to like study religions, a bunch of different religions. And I decided to walk the walk with Christianity. And so I went to a school called YWAM in Boston, and it was a creative arts and faith-based school. So where I studied theology, like super old biblical texts from the Bible that were not in the Bible today. And so I got to really dig in. And then we like took our performing arts show to Scotland, Ireland, and England, and would like dance and do stuff in the street and kind of like evangelize. I've since exited the circle of religion, but faith, prayer, and like the power of prayer has stayed with me. And that's a topic for another chat. We can always get into that, but that's kind of the foundation of this trip. Let me share a couple photos, I guess, just because I do have some. This is Lucas, one of my closest homies. So you make a lot of homies out there. Some of these people will stay with you for life. I was b-boying out there. And like these are some of the youth that I met and inspired, and like, yeah, like the way that I connected with them was through faith, and I still keep up with some of these kids today. But like we connected as just like individuals that were like into cool things, you know? Some homies, Lucas eating people. I love this guy named Aaron. We were both into anime and like jumping high and attacking each other, taking photos, just like, you know, the dreads were really dreading at that point in my life. And on the road, like Scotland, Ireland, and England, like I started like learning music through this, and we would just make drum sets out of everything. Some days were not the best days. Wow, he's bummed. He is bummed today. Like out in the streets, just like raining and shit. Like, yeah, you're not always stoked, but that's cool. And honestly, like Ireland was one of the most beautiful places I'd ever seen. Like I thought Calgary was like nice, and it is, but there's something about how lush it is out there because it's always wet. I remember we took this hike up to this place, and everyone was kind of going one way, and there was a different way, and I was like, I kind of want to go that way. So I went by myself, and it's not photoed here, but there was this valley that I came upon, and the valley was just covered in lavender. It was just like full of purple. It was like one of the most beautiful scenes, and it was just for me. But when we got to the top, and this is kind of the top, it was just so windy and the ocean was blowing all this air. But you can see it's really rolly and hilly, and we found this dip in the grass, and we just laid in the grass, and like the wind was like blowing over us, and it was just like such a cool scene. You create these core memories through these kinds of experiences, and you bring people along the way with you, and you create friendships that last for life. You know, some of these people that I traveled with, they know me in a way that people at home don't know me. You know, my identity is anchored at home in a different way. And when I set sail and I go somewhere else and I lift my anchor, my identity has room to kind of grow and flex and flow. And I get to decide and discover who I am in the moment there, outside of the people that are like, oh, you know, like Dan is this way, you know, Jolie is this way. But when you're outside of that, you're like, like, who am I right now? And those people that are with you on that journey reflect that new experience with you, and it's a beautiful thing. Okay, South Korea. So my roots as a dancer were breakdancing. 2005, Rivers Crew, B-Boy Born. This might mean some things to some of you, but I saw this video and it was to Eric B, Don't Sweat the Technique. And he just like was so stylish. And I was like, what is this? I was 17 at the time and I started getting into dancing. That's when I started. And so I eventually was able to travel to South Korea, and let's take a look. Let's take a look at some South Korea things, because this started a new part of my journey. It started a part of my journey where I inherited a camera from a friend of mine, a film camera, and I started getting into film. I started taking shots. I started seeing life through the lens. And as you'll kind of see throughout my practice, this is like really like the origin story of understanding light and of understanding capturing moments and bringing those moments home. And this is what transitioned into filmmaking. This was my room in South Korea, and it was the best sleeps I ever had. This is a mattress called a Yo, and it's just a mattress on the ground, and you roll it up, and you have space in your room afterwards. I had wicked cockroaches in here. There was like a hole in the wall, like from an outlet, and we had cockroaches. We just didn't know what was going on. One day I go to the bathroom, open up the vanity, and cockroach is like walking with his like hairy belly on my toothbrush. Like the bristles are like tickled, and I'm like... And like we killed it, and we were stepping on it. We threw cardboard on it, and we stepped on it, and like it sounded like we stepped on like a bag of chips. And they're scurrying, but at first when you see them, they don't even care. Like they don't care until you start to try to kill them. But I found that they were coming through this hole because one night I just heard this clicking sound. I'm like, what is that? I turn on the light, and I look at the wall, and like in the wall there's this cockroach just like eating like a piece of the wall. I'm like, bro, what? And so I like grabbed this umbrella, and like I was gonna try and stab it, and it was just like back into the wall. And I was like, okay, tape that up, and like they stopped showing up. But those are dope stories, you know. Like for me, like I had never experienced like cockroaches, like big boys, you know. This is also where I got my dreads cut. I stayed at a place, my first Airbnb. I got lice. I tried my best to save my hair. I boiled it in vinegar. It was suffocating, worst experience. Like you literally can't breathe, but then that's how you kill the eggs and the lice. And then I put Vaseline in my hair to weaken the bond from the eggs so I could get the eggs out of my hair. But then my dreads were full of Vaseline. I couldn't get that out. So you got to use dish soap to get the Vaseline out. And then your hair smells like dish soap, blah, blah, blah. Like 4 a.m. one day, I just like took 2 dreads in the front and just cut it off. And like, I almost threw up. It was so much energy. It was so much time. At that point, my dreads were down to my butt. But I was able to release so much, and like immediately started getting like modeling gigs, and all of this different stuff started to happen for me out in Korea. People stopped asking me if I sold drugs, and they started like giving me job opportunities. It was like, this is Black Illumin. This is a hip hop artist that I met while I was out in Korea, and he was traveling from the Philippines, and he was doing big collabos with K-pop artists. And so I ran into him in a foreigners district called Itaewon. And Itaewon is where a lot of foreigners live. It's such a dope place to go and check out when you're in Korea. And I told him the story about like, yeah, you know, I came here, I wanted to train b-boying, like B-Boy Born, like someone that I really look up to. And he was like, yo, I see him out all the time. So at one party, we went out, and he introduced me to B-Boy Born, and I got to tell him like, dude, you're the reason I started dancing. You know, and he was like, cool, you know, like, do you smoke cigarettes? I'm like, no, yes. I said yes, I didn't. I'm like, yeah. What do you smoke? So I smoke these kinds. So I went to the store and I like bought cigarettes and like wanted to hang out with him. You know, I'm like, here you go. You know, and so, and it was cool because I met my idol and I realized that he's just a dude. He's just a guy. And it kind of gave me permission to realize, like, yeah, I'm just a dude and a guy, and I can like do stuff too. Like you start to put people on a pedestal and you idolize them and you think that they're like, this thing that they're not. They're just a human being as well. But it was a beautiful place, a lot of different scenes. We move on. So that was South Korea. New York City. So I want to talk about this in a little bit of a different way. I might jump ahead a little bit. I might not show anything from here. I'll show some stuff later. But Tony Tran, shout out Tony Tran. He comes through. You'll kind of meet him. He started a lot of stuff here. YYC, like Vogue YYC, Tony Tran started that. He brought Vogue to Calgary because he went out to New York City and experienced Vogue and was like, Calgary needs to see this. He brought it back. He also brought a lot of house back. That was my introduction to house, was through Tony Tran predominantly, and then also Lady C. But Lady C was always in and out. So he was like, I'm going to New York, and he gave me the opportunity to come with him because at that time, after Korea, I found house in Korea. Even though I went to train breaking, I was going out to the club a lot. I was going out by myself. I didn't know a lot of people. I didn't know a lot of the language. And I was like finding house clubs, and I was finding the Jack. And I found like house there. That's where I really found the Jack, and my house changed forever. So when I teach, I really teach from that perspective of understanding the Jack and not the steps of house, because it's the groove. And so I got to meet some of the greats, Sekou, blah, blah, blah. Ejo. I got to meet Marjorie Smarth before she died. All of the 36 Chambers of Styles people. We went after 36 Chambers of Styles, and we got down in the club. I got to see like one of the clubs from the documentaries of like, Check Your Body at the Door. That place is now closed down. And you just like kind of go in this door, and it's just like a really small floor with a set of stairs. And at the top of the stairs, it says, please, no dancing. And it's like such a deep staircase, you don't really hear the music until you start going down, and you just like open up into this space, coming from Calgary, few spotlights on the floor, really nicely lit, bar, ciphers, crazy amounts of good dancers. And I'm just like, I just hadn't seen that before. When you go to places like Summer Dance Forever, these big jams, and it's like 1,000 people in the room that are at the highest caliber of dancing that you've seen in your city. It's like, damn, there's a lot going on. There's a lot to take from that. Okay, so the Hip Hop and Funk Styles Club. When I came back, university, I took over as the club president of Hip Hop and Funk Styles. And the reason I took over is because if I didn't, it would just kind of go away. And we were throwing jams, we were doing workshops, we were programming things, we were bringing in artists. At that time, Pulse Studios had just kind of opened up. And so we were promoting their stuff. We were working out of the University of Calgary. We were providing space. And I was kind of carrying the torch of culture here. And this is really what I want to inspire, is like when you go places, when you come back, it's really important to kind of plant the seeds that you accumulated abroad and start to grow some fruit over here. So, I would love to take some images and just like show you guys this stuff, because like going through this, like looking at this stuff was a blast from the past for me. It was like actually wild. And this is actually Dan Bowie's origin story. Dan Bowie and I go way back. Dan Bowie introduced me to video games, and his brothers whooped my ass at video games and just like made fun of me. Like I remember like his brother Ka came in one day, and Ka would just like roast you every single time. And I roasted him. I had a good roast for him, and he had nothing to say to me. I had dreadlocks at the time. He's like, yo, Dan, why is this mop talking to me? Like just absolutely like he's just every time, dude. Like Ka was just so good. So me and Dan go way back, and I remember like, I introduced Dan to Hip Hop and Funk Styles idea. He came with a group of my homies from junior high. And these are some of the jams we used to throw in. Like, look at the bodies. Like, it was a different time where like 200 people showed up to spectate at a jam. It was absolutely insane. Because the bubble got so big in Calgary, it eventually burst. And all of these big artists, Lady C, all these people, like they started to venture out of Calgary because there wasn't anything left for them to absorb. So they needed to go other places. And that's when I, as a younger person at that time, stepped into dance, right? I was one of the only people still teaching house or still dancing house. And so Travis was leaving his position at one school and asked me if I would start taking over, and I did. And for like, 5-6 years, it was just me and Travis teaching house in Calgary. That was it. You know, right now you got people like Alan, you got people like Seb, like these big, George, like we have these people coming up. Like the scene is growing and it's hitting another bubble where people are getting really fucking good. And it's like nice to see. And like, it feels like for me, like I took a step back from teaching last year because I can, you know, and it feels nice where I'm like, yo, like people are here. And like, I always just had this feeling like if I just keep doing this, if I keep giving back what I have, like eventually it's just going to happen. And it's just like it happens. And it's really nice to see. But this was a different time, you know, like some of the flyers, maybe you guys know Crystal She was in the crew. Maybe you know, Monday, B-Girl Monday. She was in the crew too. That was a guy named Yimu. You don't see him around much, but he was a nasty popper and like waver back in the day. You know, he was a part of the crew. Wow. What's going on here? Yeah, man. Nathan Escantador, maybe you see him. Like he wasn't even touching decks at the time, and now he's like doing stuff like that. We had a whole crew. It was tight. Anybody know this guy? Maybe not. Yeah, the OGs will know him. So Hip Hop and Funk Styles crew. And that Hip Hop and Funk Styles club is out of the university. I did not start at. A guy named No Love started that. And No Love was Modus Operandi. Modus Operandi was one of the OG crews, huge nemesis to Floor Wookiees. Like back in the day, those battles used to get so heated. Modus Operandi crew kind of fell apart, and then they started Grim Reminder, and No Love kind of went his own way. But No Love was like instrumental in creating this scene, you know, and like people don't give him a lot of love. People don't give him a lot of love. He was just like always about just like not being nice. You know, he was just always about that. But then behind all of that, he was building the community, you know, in ways that like people don't really recognize and understand. So huge shout out to No Love, because like, yeah, man, that guy's dope. So there's kind of a bit of a gap, and then I went to Paris, France. So Paris, France, I'm directly speaking about a residency here. Okay. I wrote a grant to Calgary Arts Development. I got some reference letters from people in the scene. Put together information. Dennis is really going to show you how that looks. And I went to shoot a film. And so this residency was a screen dance filmmaking residency, where I applied to be a director for my own film. I went and I shot a pilot. The directors for the program, there were 5 of us. We paid. And the dancers got to go for free. There was 13 of us living in an Airbnb and in a small castle town called Chateau Guyon. And so it was about an hour and a half outside of Paris. I'll show you guys some images. And this is where things start to shift a little bit. In terms of like, you know, I'm not going to be showing you photos so much anymore, but I started to like kind of like really grab the camera. And so this is kind of like a wrap-up video of that. This was day 1, just arriving in this castle town. And I was just eager, you know, to like get on my camera and like start editing a little bit. And at the end of the trip, I put this together. We're just vibing, very European, out on the street, just having stuff. A lot of these artists are like sick, like so dope, so cool, especially this Adrian guy with the dreads. He cut them off, but he's like traveling with Circus. And this is the castle. It's absolutely massive, and it goes all the way up. The very top is a prison. As you can see, like I've got a camera, but I'm like, what am I really doing with it? You know, it's like capturing a moment, I'm kind of telling a story, but the quality, it's kind of shaky. Maybe that's just what I see. You know, looking at this stuff today, I was like, man, I've progressed. Like things have changed. This was the space. We shared a kitchen, 13 of us. Lots of different rooms. And to me, like, this is a lot of different memories. You know, to you, this is like, that looks bunk. I don't know if I really want to stay there, you know? But it's actually like when you step into the space and you just like figure it out and you just do it and you're with these people, like you're creating a really nice experience. And yeah, a lot of these people I stay in touch with and we still collaborate. And when I go out to Europe, I catch up with them. I see what they're doing. They inspire me over Instagram. Kevin in the blue, man, he's just an absolute demon. And that was Foulet. He was the director of this program. He put it together. Definitely an enigma of a person. That's the Seine River. That's kind of where we stayed. And we were just down there, kind of living in the bottom of that street. And this is where we got to work for 2 weeks, is this castle. We did movement research, we did different labs, we sat down in classrooms, learned about film and film background. Oh, that room is a pigeon A with all those holes in it where the pigeons used to live, and they'd give pigeons like messages to fly out. I don't know if you know this, but like we made pigeons. You know, we made them, and so when we were done with them, we just released them, and that's why they kind of just like live in the city. Like they're just like, what do we do now? Yeah. And I got to learn that. I didn't know that at the time. So that was a really dope experience for me, and it absolutely launched my business that I do now. It launched a bunch of different things that I do in filmmaking, and it really solidified this idea that like when I travel and I'm capturing footage, like that can be something that is like the undertone and foundation for something that I can build to sustain my life. And that's kind of what I've done over time. Poland, what can I show you? I'll show you a bit of stuff from a film festival that happens here in town. So I went to Poland with a contemporary company. I was dancing. I danced as a contemporary dancer for 18 years. I went to the University of Calgary for dance and English. Because I was breakdancing at the university, eventually the dance department was like, yo, like, what are you doing? You want to like dance contemporary? And I was like, no, I'm a b-boy. Like I was so not about it. And then eventually, because I was using space there and like seeing stuff, I kind of got reeled in. And once I got a taste for contemporary, it gave me a completely different way of expressing myself. And I got hungry for that language. And so that brought me to Poland. We filmed in winter out in the street, this film, like this screen dance thing. And I worked for this company. I edited that film, and then I helped as a producer for their film festival, selecting films. And I worked for 4 years doing that. Shout out Wild Dogs Film Festival. It's happening still, and you can see some amazing dance films. It really kicked off throughout COVID. So let's take a little peek at some of that stuff over here. So yeah, really cool space. W&M Physical Theater, they're responsible for Wild Dogs. Hosted this at the Globe. Maybe some of you guys know Mario. Mario runs 404 Error Dance Found here in town, an amazing company. I love the work that they're doing. That's Melissa Monteros, someone you should definitely know, big in the contemporary dance scene, artistic director of Wild Dogs and also of W&M Physical Theater. And that's Michelle Moss, one of the original founders of DJD. Yeah. Absolute demon. Both of these are professors of mine at the university. Scenes from, inside. People you might know. Cindy Ansa, Alyssa Matrino, Pam Zhang, huge in the scene. Not a lot of people know her. In the middle, Ashley, all really amazing artists. Harvey Nickel. I don't know if you guys know who Harvey Nickel is, but I commissioned him to make the logo for Wild Dogs. Just to kind of bring a different kind of scene. And so we put out a call, and I sent it directly to Harvey. Of course, Harvey took it because Harvey's dirty. So yeah, Poland was really dope. And Poland, I was not expecting to like Poland. When you look at it on a map, it's situated in such a place where it's actually a very powerful country. It's got the Baltic Ocean. It's connected to Russia, Germany, all these different places. And during the Second World War, I learned when I went there, it was occupied by Nazi Germans. And so a lot of the old town was housing different weapons and things like that. But they destroyed 80% of the old town when they went through. They just left wreckage afterwards. They're like, cool, thanks. And then just shot missiles after they were leaving. So 20% of the old town remains, and it's absolutely beautiful. Warsaw, Krakow. I didn't know that it was going to be that dope. But if you know some of the art that comes out of Poland, they're making dope art because they've experienced a lot of stuff. Something I experienced about the culture of Poland is like right away, people are like cold and standoffish. And you feel like there's not a lot going on there. But when you start to understand who they are and you actually get underneath that layer of protection, they are so emotionally deep. I would argue deeper than Canadians, because they have a richer culture, a richer history. Going over into Europe as a Canadian, I feel and felt very naive. I had a lot to learn, you know, because there's park benches older than our country there, right? Like more asses have sat in that thing than like people have walked in this country, right? And so there's so much in the cultural dynamic of when you travel that you get to take that in, and it starts to develop the emotional landscape of your being as well, so that you can start to take in more and like accept more, you know, see art in a different way and express art in a different way. Also, the dollar travels a lot farther in in Poland than it does in Europe. They're running by zloty, so you can save money because EU is like double, but our money goes 6 times further in Poland, and that's huge. Okay, Slovakia. You know, COVID times, I started to connect with dancers out in Europe. OG is one of my biggest mentors after the New York scene, and so I met him online. And I was training with him for about 3 years, and some people in that group decided to throw a jam out in the mountains of Slovakia. So they wanted to do a house contemporary retreat. And so I went out there to train house and contemporary. We did mindfulness practice. We had yoga in the morning. We had a life coach that taught us about just like manifesting our dreams and brought us through different exercises. We did wellness. We went hiking into the mountains, cold plunge in the river, sauna that was on the property. All the meals were prepared for us. It was a blueprint for how I would like to do things for myself, you know, and so I've kind of recreated some of these things out here. And again, not a lot of pictures to show, but I start to like slang the camera a bit more. OG, we're driving, we're just in a car out in the mountains. OG doesn't know how to drive it. This is Peter's car. Peter's showing him how to do it while he's filming. Peter's also a filmmaker. This is the back of the van, you know, we're just chilling. This is Peter's van, and I've done some van life living as well. Highly recommend it. But as you can see, like my film practice starts to evolve here as well. Like it's just kind of looking a little bit better. The editing's a little bit cleaner. This is OG, by the way. And that was Hugo Campos, another guy. These are like people who have won Summer Dance Forever level of dancers, just like kind of tired of like that regular circuit, and they want to go to the mountains and vibe out. This guy, man, you meet some like characters out there, bro, like absolute characters. Yeah, actually. This was a contemporary teacher. She taught us a lot of floor work, and that's Rama. Rama's won a lot of different things, and he was one of the originators of this event. He's one of the people that puts it on. And so this is like kind of a different thing, you know? You're not just going to a jam and battling, but you're like experiencing like life in a different way. I was afraid to go into this bar in the mountains because like honestly, I'm in the middle of Slovakia and I'm looking different, you know? So I had to wait for the squad to go in, and like those cultural dynamics, like they'll weigh on you differently depending on your background and stuff. But so that was Slovakia. Really, really dope time. We're moving on. Portugal. All right, so that was what I kind of just spoke about. This was last year. I went out to Portugal, battled in a 2v2. Mamson ended up winning that one. But man, I just like connected with some people and like other people that kind of moved like me. And like you start to like really expand your network. And you also get validated in like where you're at and who you are. And you get validated in things that you don't actually expect. You know, like people see things in you that you don't actually try to work on in yourself, that you don't value in yourself. And you start to understand that like this way that you view yourself is actually really different than like the energy that you're putting out into the world. I love travel for that. I also rented a van and traveled from the north to the south of Portugal, just surfed the coast, That was really dope. You know, like as I've kind of like shifted and grown older through my practice, I value experience because I have a practice. I don't really need to go to a workshop now to like learn how to do a thing. I still do that, but I've done that, so I have a personal practice. So wherever I go, I'm kind of bringing that with me. So now I'm looking for kind of more of like an open experience, a bit more of an escape. And surfing is simultaneously the most liberating and terrifying thing. You know, like even this wave, right? Like that wave is as tall as that guy. That's a lot of power. It's a lot of water. When it starts to get twice that size, when you start to like walk out and you're just looking at a wall of water that just like breaks in front of you and then comes knee level, you got to go through that wave to get on it. You know, it's like the things that surfing taught me really brought me out of an actual really dark place in my life in 2025 and helped me to like approach the waves of life in a way that I had a different perspective. Because when you're out there, nothing else matters. The ocean can take you in a moment, you know, and like brooding on certain things, like it just becomes less and less relevant. So travel really helps to shift your perspective, to break you out of habit patterns, thought patterns. It builds your perspective. And yeah, it was really important for me. So Portugal, I'm just going to show you a little like, kind of like a video I got commissioned to do for a clothing company. Oh, first of all, I guess I'll show you some images. So this is OG, and this is Walid, another high level dancer, and myself. Walid screwed up, so someone cut the video, but yeah, that was one of the workshops after the battle that OG did. Khalif did one, Mamson did one. You see Mamson won there. It was a 2v2 battle. That was Portugal. You know, some scenes there when I first got there. And this is a video I got commissioned to do for a clothing company. That was a good time. It wasn't the final version. And like when I came out to Portugal, I purchased a new lens. I was like so excited to use it. Anamorphic lens, if that means anything to you. It's just like, it's got character. It's really wide. And day 2, I'm just like walking around with it and it just like fell apart. Like the lens just like fell apart. I've never seen that before. I've traveled with my lenses all the time. It's just this new thing. And I think because it had like these features, they had to kind of compromise on the build quality, but I was pissed because it was the only lens I brought. And so I had to go into Porto, deep into Porto, and find a lens and an adapter and a vintage lens. And like, it was expensive. It charged me an arm and a leg for it, but I met a dope person and I had to like really search for this. It's like hard to find that stuff out there. Buying equipment and stuff like that is hard out there. And it's way more expensive. Apple products, you're paying like triple the price. You know, I just had a homie come visit me and I gave them my laptop because I just got a new one and I could sell it, but I'm like, yo, just take this, you know, because like out there, it's impossible to get stuff. So I shot that with a vintage lens that I found. I had to like manually do it and it was like all sticky, but I acquired this like Russian Soviet vintage lens through that process. And I got my full money back on that lens that broke because I called the company and I was like, yo, what is this? But you know, it's experiences like that. And like, it doesn't always go good. Like for 3 days, I was bummed just like looking at all these dope scenes I wasn't capturing, you know?
Yo, Jared, we have a question from the chat.
Heck yeah.
From Jordan, he says, how do you find the same feeling and experiences back home in Calgary? Do you find yourself constantly searching for more?
such a good question and so timely, Jordan. For the next slide, what you actually bring home. Nah, we had that scripted. No, thank you for your question. I'll talk a little bit about that, like directly to your question before I get into the rest of the slide. Coming home, you know, like when I went out on like that faith-based journey, I traveled so many different places. I experienced so many different churches at that time, so many different people, and I was inside a bubble. I was inside a bubble of religion. And when I came home, I was absolutely lost, and I went into the wilderness, and I stopped entering into religious spaces because it was time for me to find a new version of myself that existed here. I no longer fit into the Jared that existed in Calgary before he left. And so that's when I had to start to renegotiate my relationships with the people in my life as well. Family members, friends. And when you become unrecognizable in those ways, you have two choices. You can either people please, right? Play those roles that people expect you to be. And to a certain extent, that's always going to happen. But the second choice is to really step into that feeling of estrangement, of not knowing yourself in this context anymore, and to give yourself permission to invest in that, to investigate that more. You know, when you come home and people are like, oh, I love traveling and I just want to leave and stuff like that, man, look around. There's a lot going on in Calgary. There's a lot of stuff here. There's a lot of high-level dancers with high-level offerings here that you don't actually have to spend thousands of dollars to go out and get. You know, do your training at home. Put your roots down at home so that when you go, you don't just blow away. You actually have a foundation that you're carrying with you that starts at home. And then when you come back, you enrich the space that enriched you. That's really the important part, right? If you come back and you just like go home and go into your room and you're like, oh, I miss my friends, I miss all that experience, you got to pour that experience out back into the community. And then you create new connections. And you might find that this new version of you really connects with this person that you didn't actually really understand before, but now you get them and you mirror them. And there's something there for you to like really bridge the gap of your personality to. So what you're bringing home is technique, right? Sharpened by the exposure. And then you have mentorships. You've built mentorships. Maybe you become a mentor, you know? So it reshapes the trajectory. Like I never thought I was going to teach house. I never thought I was going to teach dance. And then I got good at teaching, you know? Like I feel confident in my ability to teach at one of the highest levels. And I really appreciate that. But that came from bumping shoulders with high-level mentors and to be given permission to be myself as a teacher. Okay, peers, you know, you're building a network globally, but you can do that here at home as well, right? Your perspective has changed, and you now have a responsibility, as I've been talking about, to the community that made your growth possible, right? So now I'm going to kind of circle back to the NYC experience when I went to New York. When I went to New York and I made these connections, I wrote a grant because I knew that Sekou was going to go to Vancouver. There was no grant open at the time. So I called Kata and was like, I need some money. I need it pretty much right away. Here's my proposal. I already had it ready. Sekou's here. I want to bring him to Calgary and I want to fly him home. I want to kind of like interrupt his trip because he's going to be in Canada anyway. And they were like, we love this. Yes. I said, okay, I want people in the community to go, but I want it to be cheap. So I want to subsidize the cost of the grant so that people can take his class for $20 for a 3-hour class. Okay, let's do it. You know, I'm going to rent out Pulse. I want to support the community. I'm going to rent Pulse at full price for this. I'm going to do all the marketing myself. Let's do it. So I brought Sekou here because I'm teaching house. And the foundation that I always push across the most is Sekou's, because his idea, his method called rhythm metrics, bridges the body's geometry with the style of house in a way that is absolutely restorative to the body when you dance it in that way. And when you see a 60-year-old Sekou getting down better than you can, you're like, okay, like there's something going on here, right? And so I wanted to bring him to town and for people to get it from the horse's mouth, you know, like what I'm teaching. not only did they get to really understand where I'm coming from as a dancer and as a teacher, but after he left, they also understand how to approach my work now from an elevated awareness of where it really came from and what we're really working on. So Sekou went out to Vancouver first, and then he came to Calgary. I'll show some videos of Calgary, just a quick thing, just at Pulse Studios. There's Eddie. Sekou and Eddie really connected. Sekou like looked at Eddie and he was like, your house is good, but like you're attacking house, bro. Are you a B-boy? And so Sekou got in his face and like tried to like, shift that up. Tara Wilson. And he's like that. And like, that's the beauty of house is like house, you can bring your style to house. Sekou, man, like we're like family, and I never expected that. I never expected to like become family members with one of the like originators of this dance. Like when I see him, I love him. He loves me. He calls me nephew. I call him uncle. And hardest times in my life, like when I'm going through stuff, I call him. When I fuck up in life and I make a big mistake, I'm so sorry for swearing on stream. When I make mistakes, like I call him to be like, yo, Unc, what do I do with this? Like he's become like a support for me, and like that's him. Listens to people. He's really dives in, and that was the scene, man. That was like the scene. Everyone who made it, it was dope. It was really, really nice. And we also gave 9 spots away to kids that couldn't afford it through the Pulse Gateway program. Is that what it's called? Something like that. So we really wanted to support that. And it was 2 or 3 days of this. And I've got friends from different communities, like contemporary community, people that have never really touched house, that came through just to like experience this legend, in town. And that's kind of what it's really about. So to answer, again, to your question, Jordan, it's to go and experience things, but to like get dusty, get dirty, and to shake that dust off here at home, so that people can kind of like see the road that you've walked and get inspired by that. That's the only way that I learned how to house. Tony Tran, going out, bringing it back. So when I went out, I bring stuff back. It's really important. That's the continuum of culture, right? And it enriches your practice. Oh yeah, I guess I'll, so this was my offering, I connected with Vancouver and I was like, yo, let me just like offer you some media. And going out to Vancouver, I met dope dancers. You might recognize some. This. So yeah, did that answer the question for Jordan? Is there a follow-up question or? Cool, thank you. So yeah, the return, bringing Sekou, writing that grant, we just kind of went through that. How to start, okay? The biggest thing is, I think this is on another slide. The biggest thing is really setting a goal. Yeah, like if y'all want some of this information, like I can give you the links. I can also just straight up share this presentation with you. You won't have the pictures, but it's fine. Doesn't really matter, and most of it's irrelevant. So maybe just some of these like important slides I'll totally make available to y'all. So you can find money, but like I said, like you can't really always rely on that. the great thing is that things like Unity Charity are doing that work too, to find the money to create experiences like this. So take advantage of what's happening at home. Don't always like look yonder. I'd recommend reading a book called The Alchemist. That book is really dope, and I won't give too much away, but it really digs into this idea of what you're looking for is buried treasure. It's right here, you know. Wherever you go, there you are. If you're running from something, it's coming with you, you know, and it's just going to show up in a different way. So always work on your stuff, you know, always confront your stuff with integrity. And yeah, so you can find the money. There's some different grant bodies. Dennis is going to talk about that. He's going to dig into that. You can always reach out. I just sat on Alberta Foundation for the Arts grant board as an assessor. I just assessed a bunch of grants, ton of work. Their platform, like I said, is old school, and it's like, man, but it's dope because I get to be in contact with like grants in the system and like what that looks like. I've sat on Cabinet Council and also on CADA's boards as well for grant assessing. So you can always hit me up and ask questions about that. If you have an application that you want some eyes on, boom, big time. I can help you with that. So think in years, you know, where do you want to see yourself in 3 years, right? Start to understand some of the jams, some of the spaces that are interesting to you, and plan for like the next year, because if it's coming up this year, chances are you got to get a grant and all this stuff, you're going to run out of time. You know, so try to understand, create a grant calendar for yourself. So keep these things in mind and really dig into Dennis's workshop when he's coming through. Your art deserves to travel. The funding does exist. The community needs what you bring back. That's a specific one for Jordan. And yeah, this is your invitation to begin. You know, I didn't always have money. I didn't always have funding. The first time I used funding was to go to Paris. That was 2022. All the other trips I self-funded, you know, or I had help from family, or I fundraised, you know, through groups. Grants didn't exist to me. And then for a long time, grant was just like this thing that's like way too ethereal. There's no way I can write a grant. I have no idea. So if you want to demystify grants because they feel like out of reach for you, like literally hit me up. Dennis is going to do his workshop. There's people out here that can help you. Yeah, so there's some resources there, and that's the end of the presentation. I want to open it up for some questions in-house and also online. And yeah, just thank you for your attention. Yeah. You have a question?
Websites or whatever to hire your chance or
Okay, yeah. What was your name?
Layla.
Layla, thanks for your question, Layla. I think this idea of like applying for the same grant multiple times, if you're gonna do that, I would think of this idea of scaffolding. Okay, like so scaffolding is like those metal structures that you see outside of a building. They build them with pipes. They start at the bottom and they start to build up. They don't really build sideways and just keep going sideways. So if you're applying for the same grant in the same way and they don't see that you're kind of going somewhere with it, you're just kind of repeating the same thing, then you're less likely probably to be successful. It could have just been that there was like a lot of grants going on, but having a vision and seeing the tree for the trunk and the roots and the branches and understanding, okay, I'm going to start here with this grant, and then like next year, I'm going to collect all the resources. I'm going to take pictures. I'm going to have all of my receipts and stuff so that I can do that in a new, heightened way, a way that maybe I don't actually know because I'm going to still get that experience. And then I'm going to put that into the next grant so they can see trajectory. The travel grant is a good one to backpack on top of other grants. So if you're going to do professional development grants, you can use a travel grant to give you a bit more funding to do that professional development. So that's a great question. And part two to that question's answer is there are different streams that exist in granting bodies for a reason. So for example, you have professional development grants, about 5 to 10 grand. And then you have explore and create grants, 15 to 30 grand. Because now I have this professional development, I have this idea, now I need to build a project. And so the trajectory in that way is really kind of like, to have like that plan. And then maybe you finish this idea and you want to go back to professional development or a research grant, research phase. So really understanding the different, I guess like modules or like different kind of like streams of grants can help you to like put an idea together. Maybe you've got an idea, you don't actually know how it falls exactly into like what category. So then you like read those categories and it's like, okay, like if I apply to this grant, then I communicate this idea in this way so that it adheres to the criteria of this grant. Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome. Joe, there's another question. No mic, we're good. Forget, yeah, okay.
My question's more about just travel. Like, I've recently had more opportunities to travel, kind of for what you're saying, for dance, not for dance, to learn just different experiences. But it's like, what is your mentality for? You've gone to so many places, and to me, that's like, it's overwhelming in a good way, but just like taking the initiative to go and do all these different things and all these new things, like. Yeah, what is your mentality towards it? Do you plan all these things? Like, do you have worry? Like,
Worry?
Yeah. Like, I just want to know how.
I mean, there's been a number of times. I mean, so to kind of start from the beginning of your questions, like, how do I plan these things? Sometimes I plan them. Sometimes it's really about synchronicity. I'm sharing where I'm at with my artistic practice. I'm putting it out there, and someone's like, hey, I saw this opportunity. I look at that opportunity and I'm like, that sounds dope. And like, I can kind of find help through that. I've reached out to like mentors. Melissa Monteros was the reason I went to Paris to do that filmmaking workshop. And like, she catapulted some things, because I was sharing my interest with where I'm at as an artist right now after 6 years of not seeing her, and she was like, okay, well, like, here's where you can go. She saw that I was lost, I've gone traveling, spent all my money, come back broke, and then had to like figure it out month to month, like, and is that amount of worry worth it? Depends on your risk, your level of risk that you want to take. For me, I figured it out. I've lived on the edge a lot. Going to South Africa and experiencing some of like the dangers that I experienced. Coming home, picking up a camera, I've walked every inch of every alley in Calgary and never felt as dangerous as I did in South Africa. I wouldn't recommend that. I'm not saying go and do that because the streets are Fenty these days. They're a little bit different, right? But you pick up things along the way and like you start to manage the stress of travel. How to pack your bag, what to pack, how to keep what where. I've got so many different gadgets and bags and I'm like at the ready at all times. Like if I need something, I need it now. Where's my stuff? Can someone come up behind me with a knife, cut my bag and I lose everything important to me? Like keeping my head on straight. Like you start to pick up skills like that. Like worries, like sometimes I worry like, am I going to miss something if I leave Calgary? But home is always there and home is where the heart is, and like wherever you go, there you are. And so, I think travel, it doesn't necessarily need to be a part of your artist resume. Like you don't have to do it. There's dope artists that born here, stay here, and keep doing it here. But those opportunities when they come to you, how do I plan it? Sometimes I plan it. Sometimes it's by the seat of my pants, literally. And it's really through relationship. It's through relationship so that I'm not arriving somewhere completely by myself. You know, that I'm going to meet someone that I like kind of know. I don't think I've ever traveled and not kind of like had somebody that I know was going to kind of be around. Yeah. You know, Korea, I was pretty much on my own a little bit. I knew people there, but I had to figure it out. And that was like a nice experience for me. Yeah, because I really found myself. So I don't know. Was that? Yeah. What's up, Alan?
My question is like, you've been doing house for a while, and like, have you experienced like major stages in realization within the style, like also within yourself? Because I feel like house is very, spiritual. It's very like in here, and so like, what are the major kind of phases you got, or like realizations? Like, oh, when you realize that, you kind of did it in a different way, where you, I guess, like level up, not just in terms of skill, but like your perspective on it.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question, dude. And like, it's a high level question, man. And like, Alan is dope. I like really respect Alan. He's come up heavy. Like, he's so good. Like, I'm glad he wasn't at the last battle I was in. Like, holy. Like, I was thinking he was gonna be there, and I'm like, that's gonna be Alan, dude. And he wasn't there. I was like, phew. But even in that battle, like, I came in a different way because of my experience. And like, yo, it's such a good question to ask, because my experience with house was, I was taught in such a way that it was like filtered through somebody, right? It wasn't through the masters, it's filtered through somebody, and that somebody focused on the steps, the choreography, the musicality. And so that was my introduction, was the steps. The jack was later. You know, when I went to Korea, that was absolutely the most fundamental level up. You know, because I had workshops coming through, Lady C, all these people teaching me different things, different grooves, and I could like get it, you know? But I was approaching it from my hip hop mentality, because I started in hip hop crews of like choreography and like emphasis on like boom, boom, hitting stuff, like getting in your face. I was young, I was b-boying, I was aggressive, I had to get that energy out, it was coming through my dance. When I went to Korea, if I was aggressive in a space, I would get checked. There were some times like they didn't like foreigners. There were clubs that said no foreigners. I was like, whoa, it's like low-key very racist. But when you go over there, you understand that like they want to protect their spaces too, because they've got the army bases there, and those guys can do whatever they want, and they like mess up things. So I had to come through with a level of respect. And so my house became more internal, and I literally found the jack. I found the jack, you know? And like, because you guys are like dancers, like the difference is like, you know, I'm just doing a little rock step, and I'm kind of like hitting the music in a way where I'm like attacking the music. When I add the jack to it, I listen to the jack. The jack tells me when I step, and the step changes now. That changed everything for me, because I was like doing the steps, and I was like on the music, and I was too fast. But then like when I'm listening to the jack, you know, like everything changes. I'm listening to like my body flow. And that was like such a huge level up for me, because every step that I knew changed. And when someone's like new to house or like dancing house, it looks like they're going up. The dance looks like it's going up, but the dance is always going down. That changed for me. You got to go down to go up. You got to be rooted, right? You never jump like from here. You go down and then jump. And that's what house is like, it's dropping a ball into a bowl. The ball goes from one side of the bowl to the other. And in that, you create momentum, right? You create direction. And so that leveled up for me. I was like, whoa, it's like, it's the hips, it's the jack. And then I looked like a house dancer all of a sudden. You know, it unlocked that for me. So that was like really the big revelation. And taking house from other styles, because yeah, there's New York, right? That's where it came from. But then there's Japan. And for whatever reason, Japan is so good at taking a style and like immortalizing it to a T. This is this style, but then flipping it in their way. And like they go crazy with the footwork. And then there's Europe. Europe is on its own different flow. They come from a different space of a lot of contemporary, a lot of floor work, a lot of like Russian styles, all these kinds of things. So it filters into the dance in that way. My house is at a level, like it's at a different place now where like, you know, like when I battled, I've got like years of vocabulary, years of tricks. None of that came out. It was all vibe. It couldn't even do what I wanted to do. There was so much stuff I wanted to do, and I didn't do it, you know? But I took that battle, And like for me, it was like really humbling because I brought the club, you know, and to be honest, like I know a lot of OGs will say this stuff, like we're not trying to recreate the club, right? But I learned this dance, I danced this dance in the club, thousands upon thousands of hours by myself, with Kevin Chu, with whoever was around at the club, in front of the speaker, in the corner, dark, by myself. Maybe had drinks, maybe not, you know, like that was, so when I battle, I bring that, right? Like it's an undeniable essence that you're bringing because like, man, at this point, especially at this point, everybody has access to all the resources, all the moves. Like everybody's good. Everybody's sick. Everybody can do all these crazy variations of steps and all this stuff. But the essence that you bring, that's what wins a house battle because it is a spiritual thing. It's such a spiritual thing. And that's why I love that battle. Like, you know, when I see Afro and hip hop and breaking at the competition level these days, like I'm absolutely astounded. I'm like literally blown away. But the energy is not where I'm at anymore. Like I literally can't do that now. Like, because it's just like not the language I'm trying to speak. But house, where you still got like 50-year-olds just like Ejo, like absolutely like smashing it, that longevity is like so interesting to me, right? That cyclical culture is like so interesting to me. So yeah, like the level ups, like I'm not trying to do the most anymore, for sure. You know, I'm trying to catch a vibe. You know, sometimes people ask me like how I approach a battle, and it's to, like for me, the person that wins a battle in house is the person who was the most connected to the moment. And the moment is the crowd. The moment is the music, the DJ, and themselves internally. That's a lot of stuff. And if you're in your head thinking like, oh, I got to do this, or like, oh, I'm self-conscious, all that stuff, it's not happening, right? The battle is literally here. It's not who you're facing. They're a part of it. You got to like take them into account, because if you're locked into all of those elements and you're responding from your inner world, then you won. Like you literally won, you know, whether like you took the dub or not, because you create that moment where everybody felt something and they get tingly. Like, so that's, that's a huge question, bro. And I appreciate that. Yeah. That's kind of where I'm coming from. Yo.
My question was about just you and your travel journey and like the exact places you chose to go, because you took us kind of through a journey of where you traveled. And to me, it started off in South Africa, like that opportunity. So then, and then seeing you go from that to like Tokyo, and you did a lot in Europe and Poland and stuff. So I'm like, is there a reason why, even though it started in South Africa, in the motherland, that you didn't choose to travel or train as much within Africa and you went to other places? Obviously, you know, you spoke a little bit about that was where you realized you were mixed and stuff like that. And like when you were creating your journey as an artist, you found yourself in these other places that took you to Tokyo and took you to a lot of Europe and things like that. I was just wondering, as an artist, is there a reason why? Of course, maybe when you showed us that little map, I saw when you zoomed in, you saw a lot more residencies and, you know, in Europe than there was in Africa. So maybe that has a part to do with it. But then I was just asking you, as a artist who does this, is there a reason you chose those specific places and not other, even though the travel started in the motherland?
Yeah, I mean, so this trajectory, this journey that I shared is a snippet, you know, and I got to see how lucky I have been, you know, to travel. And there were other opportunities for me to travel and to train in the African diaspora, you know, through Wezo Africa. Some of that stuff got brought here, and I was really thankful for that, you know, so I got to kind of connect there. But that's you know what it highlights for me is like a deeper conversation of personal identity and race. And this is just a personal experience for me. It's going to be really different. But going to South Africa like really highlighted some things for me, and it was important because growing up here in Calgary during my generation, I'm not white or black, I'm both. And I'm black until I'm not black enough, and I'm never white, but I'm not black, I'm not fully black, you know? So it's like this interesting diaspora where now I walk the middle path, you know? I understand both sides, but I'm neither. And I'm maybe one of those things when it's convenient, you know? And so I experienced racism from both sides. And so that's a really interesting experience that I had. And when I went to South Africa, that, because of the apartheid, was really expanded more for me in a way that I could understand it, you know? And so Africa is not where I'm from. My family's from Guyana, you know, from West Africa, you know? So my background, my blood is mixed with black Indian, and Asian, you know, so like that's who I am. And then my mom is a redhead, you know, from Scotland, like a ginger, you know, and so I grew up in this really interesting space, but my stepdad raised me and he was Jamaican. So I grew up here in the Black diaspora, in the dance hall. My parents, shout out R&R Crew, original R&R Crew, they started the dance hall and reggae scene here. They were the pioneers of the reggae and dance hall scene here in Calgary. So I grew up in the dance hall. You know, like I grew up sleeping in speaker boxes in my parents' basement. My dad was a carpenter and he had a massive sound, you know, and so I grew up DJing. 5 years old, I was DJing, you know, that's why I can DJ now, but I went a different path, you know, like, you know, that thing when your parents give it to you, it's like, it's kind of too easy and you're like, you know, your birthright. So the other places that I went to South Africa. It was an opportunity, you know, and it all started for me. It was nothing to do with dance, nothing to do with artistry. It was a personal question of origin. I wanted to go and experience it. So I went to South Africa. I went to the Museum of Nelson Mandela, and I wanted to understand some questions because I was asking on a personal level, human level, and faith-based, spiritual level, like, what am I? What is this? And like, where do I want to go? You know, and like, I didn't stop with Christianity. I studied the Quran and Islam, studied Taoism. I went on silent meditation retreats where I didn't speak for 12 days and just meditated for 13 hours a day. That is by far one of the hardest experiences I've ever had in my life. Harder than any other experience. You know, I didn't know that it would be so hard. And so these places that I picked, the reason that I went to Korea and Japan, because I wasn't accepted by the races that I am, in Calgary at that time, there were a ton of refugees from Asia, Japanese, and predominantly Vietnamese and also Chinese people. They were different too. They accepted me, you know? Dan Bui accepted me. And like going to his house, experiencing his family's culture, completely different thing, you know? Different food. You know, Dan would just like whip up something super easy and like low key, like just like garbage trash noodles. But I was like, this is the best thing I've ever had in my life. You know, like just throws like some lettuce in, you know? And so, and there was an honor system that existed in the culture of Japanese culture that I gravitated towards because I had a Canadian culture that was just kind of wishy-washy steak and potatoes. It wasn't giving me something. But like when I saw like Japanese culture and their way of looking at the world, that absolutely resonated with me. It gave me a sense of purpose and a sense of drive. And so, you know, I learned Japanese, I speak Korean, I like watched a ton of anime. And so going over there was kind of like experiencing a past life. You know, it's almost like I felt like closer to that than like what I was, you know, because what I was rejected me. So that's kind of where I made some of those leaps and bounds, you know. And in terms of like my Black identity, I've had to like reconcile that through my arts practice over years, you know, because the diaspora and colonization worked, you know, it distanced me from my culture, you know, and it also turned my culture against me. It estranged me within my own spaces. So, I mean, that's a long thing, like, you know, like nappy dance and some of these other things that I've been a part of that are all Black spaces, all Black things, like that was healing for me. And I got to speak about some of this stuff in that way, you know, so the traveling has been huge. But when I'm traveling, I am acutely aware that I'm Black. Like, I know that, you know, like whatever you are, you're always going to kind of carry that. You have that vision of yourself and you got to like really see like what it feels like to judge yourself from a third view and like navigate that wherever you're at, because you're going to be different in some spaces, you know, so you kind of like show up accordingly. And that's a big, deeper question. But when you're traveling cross culture, there's going to be culture shock, you know, and you really start to like see yourself in a different way. And that's definitely a part of travel. You know, like South Africa, the dogs were trained to discern between color. I'd be in a car, we'd be driving onto our compound, it would be scanning the car, it would see all white folk, and the moment it saw me, it would lose its mind trying to attack me in the car. It was trained to discern between, and this is Africa, you know? Like, the monkeys were dangerous, bro. Like, you didn't mess with the monkeys. They're street gangs, like literally like hanging out, and like they would swing through your place and steal your stuff. And like, you could not fight them because like they will get you. They're big, you know? So yeah, traveling can be like really eye-opening. It can really stress test your perception of self, you know, like what you're carrying. And it can also, based on your like your background and your experience, it can dictate where you want to go. You know, I started going to Europe. What brought me there, man? Well, it was the Boston thing, you know, Scotland, Ireland, England. And then at that point, it was more about artistry. It was like, okay, the people that I look up to, the dancers I look up to, the spaces that are being curated, it's happening over there, you know, in these spaces. So that's what kind of brought me over there after that. Yeah, that's a deep question, bro. I could really chat on that for a minute, but yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you so much. And your answer, I just had a rebuttal because I think you give a very in-depth answer, but then my question was that exactly in the point of artistry, because I felt like people who are of the African descent specifically, when they're looking at artistry, they may feel like they have to go to the Korea or the Europe because that is what is either booming or what is popping. Do you understand? So that's why I wanted to ask you, as an African descent, why did you choose a career? But now that I know, it's because that accepted you or things like that. So, and the people you were looking forward to were from there. So that means if you were in a different circumstance or a situation where you were accepted, or the people you look up to who were dancers were from places in Africa, for some of these residencies you would have done in that place. So that's why I was asking, because we have a lot of people who say, oh yes, they go to Tokyo and train, or they go to Europe, go to Paris and that. How many people you know who say, oh, I'm gonna go to Ghana and do a residency there? Yeah. Even though there's tons of great West African dancers who now, because of their West African background, can dance house like crazy because their footwork is mad. So I was just thinking about an artist in general. Why is it that we have to go to the Japan or something? Especially when, if I really think about it, the origins of these movements were from there. So that's why I was just wondering, just based on your travel, after starting from there, it seemed like you went everywhere else besides there.
Yeah, like thank you again for part two. Like my experience through that has been through the diaspora. You know, like going to New York, you know, the originators of house are all from like the African descent, the African American, you know, the Americanized African. And that was their response to their environment. That was their response to slavery. You know, house music, blues, jazz, disco, the origins of these music, right? These are black sounds, right? These are black things. And so I experienced it in that way. Africa was like not open to me as an artist in those kind of same ways. I didn't get those opportunities. I don't think it wasn't that I didn't want to go there. But for me personally, like I love house and I like contemporary dance. Those are the things that like I started to steep in. Now I'm starting to get into Ndobolo and like, you know, like these African styles, which I've only really been able to like experience through the BAD program through Woezo, you know? So I did that 1 year and that's what I learned about some of these residencies out in the Congo, like, because they were talking about their residencies and stuff like that. And so, yeah, for me, like, I think it's also a conversation of like, I don't think you have to go to Asia or Europe. You don't have to do that. You know, like you can go to Africa if that's where you want to go. Unfortunately, I think access to those spaces is a little bit more difficult. People have a different view of it. There's not as much funding. There's not as much safety, you know, in some of these areas. And it just depends on your interest, because now what's popular is Afro. And like a lot more people are bringing artists from Africa or going to Africa, you know, especially in Europe, like the cross, because it's so close. Like there's a ton of Africans in Europe doing their thing. So sometimes you don't have to go to Africa to get Africa, you know, same thing with like some of these other dances. But, you know, I think it depends on like your journey, you know, and like that journey kind of started with me, like asking like who I wanted to be, how the world was, you know, and that mixed in with a lot of different things. And so different opportunities presented themselves to me, and that was the road that I took. So, yeah, man. We done at 3:30?
Technically, yes.
So, I mean, if there's any other burning questions, I would, yeah.
So, just a quick question about grants. When applying to a grant, do you have to let them know that you're gonna bring something back and exactly what you're gonna bring? But if you wanted to go through just to increase your connections, develop as an artist, all that, maybe you wouldn't be able to bring something. So, is bringing something back a requirement?
Yes and no. Speaking about the impact of an experience and how that's going to change you as an artist within the community, that's enough. That's not necessarily you saying, I'm going to put a workshop or I'm going to teach what I learned. That's just like, I'm going to come home like more enriched, and I'm a part of this community, and I'm excited to like share that experience with people. But there are professional development grants where it's all about artistic impact, professional development, and not so much about community connection. But there are some grants that really want that, where if like you're getting like a significant amount of money, they want to see how it's impacting this space. It's taxpayer money, right? And it's this thing that you want to kind of percolate and stimulate the artistic space where you're at. But honestly, not always. Like, a lot of times you don't have to like, this is exactly what I'm bringing back, but understanding how the experience is going to impact you and possibly your community, that's like where you just can like start. Yeah. 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 Anyone else? Hey.
This speaks to filmmaking and editing. How has that, well, first of all, how did you end up getting into it? But then also, how has that impacted your view on dance? And even like, how has that impacted you as like an artist? Because I'm also looking into some filmmaking stuff. So I'm interested on seeing your perspective on that.
What was your name?
Enzo.
Enzo?
Yeah.
So, love that name, bro. Thanks for your question, Enzo. I was always kind of making videos growing up, just like stupid things, funny things, but it kind of got a little bit more serious when I was in university and I wanted to kind of create a dance film project for an English class. I picked up a video camera, and I realized I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to communicate my message. And it was a learning process. It was really hard. I didn't understand the technicals. I just like could see what I wanted to make. And so that's kind of where it really began. But to speed forward and really speak about filmmaking and how I see it now, I've been involved in dance and music. Like, a lot of people don't know this, but I was like touring as a trap and R&B artist for a while in a group. And like, no one really knows about that. It goes like heavy and deep. But I'm also a guitarist and a musician and a composer, so I also sound design my films. So what happened with picking up a camera is that I realized that film is the vehicle that can transport all of my interests. It can speak the visual language of dance and the body. It has narrative, it has dialogue, it has music, and a picture says 1,000 words, and every frame is 1,000 pictures, So it's like, you can tell stories, you can world build. And that's why I was interested in it, because it's just like this vehicle of like showing somebody something, and I can put inside of it all of my different interests. So that's where filmmaking's at. And it just kind of started from a desire to tell stories. And then that became like my way. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we have people to go to the studios and learn how to dance.
Likewise.
It's just like community dance and see how people dance, So right now in this point of my life, I'm trying to explore more like the studio thing, but I found like I can learn more about out the studio, then go to the studio. So I'm asking you this question because you are more experienced than me, and how you take this position on like, I create my dance journey just vibing, and that's how, like, by home we used to express and found like that identity. So I'm like, when I'm supposed to go to the studio, right? So yes, it's like how I can elevate more myself in dance, and yes, I don't know. It's like I'm struggling with that thing, but I'm found like I'm just know how to dance just because always is in my blood, but. I want to see like what is the best option to not struggle in the studio or jams or dance battles, because I feel it's like it's all out in dance.
I mean, thank you for your question, Seb. When I was dancing, first starting up, the studios didn't exist. You would like have like a contemporary dance studio that had a hip hop class. you know? Yeah. And then Pulse opened up, right? And that changed everything. But at that point in time, I was already used to like going to the streets, watching YouTube, throwing myself at the ground, trying to figure stuff out. And we had kind of the golden era of clubs in my generation. So I got to go to the club. And like, not a lot of people that went to the studio went to the club. It's the same as now. This is how it is. You know, like Kevin, Gomo, like we was out there. We was doing that stuff because like that was our time. We performed in the clubs mad times. You know, when I'm teaching sometimes, I'll have somebody come to my classes that is from like a festival background. You know, like going out to the woods and like dancing, and like they have absolutely no technique, but they've got passion and soul, and they can dance. Like they can dance, but they don't have any technique. They don't have the shapes of dance. And so I just kind of like tell them like, these are shapes, these are patterns. And if you put these shapes and patterns inside your toolbox that is fueled by your spirit and your soul, then you expand the range of what you can say. So when I go to the studio, I'm looking to be challenged. I'm looking to expand the range of what I can say. But I don't really develop my soul and my spirit in the studio unless it's with other people and unless it's with the cypher. Am I against the studio? No. We can't recreate the club space. We can't recreate the golden age of the club, right? And I don't think we should, because that's not where the dance is at now. There's been a need for the dance to be taught and for real teachers and for like all of that stuff to be put into a space. That's the studio. And they're doing a much better job of being like, this is where it came from. We're bringing this person in so you can get the real thing. But of course, it feels sterilized, you know? Like, but that's just it. That just is what it is. You know, the days of old are gone. You get to experience from that person, take in what they're doing, what they're saying, but then, go have your own experience. You know, like, I got to club, man. Like, I achieved status, like club lord. Like, I love saying that. I don't know what it is. Like, if I show up to the clubs in Calgary, like, I'm getting in. And my homies are getting in too. And we're probably going to get a free round at the bar. Like, I put that time in, you know? And, like, I like that. I like that it was all about the community, street level, showing up, popping off, making the party dope. The DJ's like, yo, like, come back. And, like, when you come back, you come for free. You know, like, creating that vibe. You know, like, that's just it. It's about the culture thing. It's not about getting the best moves so I can go to the battle and be the best. You know, I did not battle very much. I pick my moments in battles where I'm like, okay, I got to battle now. Like, it's time. It's time to pour out. You know, like, that last battle was so important for me at that point in my life. Like, it was a milestone moment. And I left a lot of who I was, like, back there now. You know, so I would, like, trust that instinct that you have of, like, really cultivating your experience within yourself. You know, have real experiences out in the world. And, like, yeah, when you're looking to, like, train yourself, to increase your vocabulary, you know, to get some knowledge, go to the studio because that's where it's at. But there's also knowledge in just, like, your own experience. You know, like, that's where these dances came from. And just because, like, those dancers in New York created this dance, you know, we don't all have to be stuck in time there, you know, and then, like, go to the studio and study it. And it's like, it's not alive there, right? It's alive out where you, like, bring it and where you develop your own things, you know, like, you and I got down. That was a sick ass time. I remember that. I was like, man, this kid is so dope, you know, and I had a really good time there. And, like, it was, like, actually one of the best exchanges that I've had. I don't, like, really have good exchanges like that with people out. You know, we were at an Afro party and we were just, like, throwing weird shit all over the place, and it was, like, fun. You know, but those are the moments that I love, you know, when I'm kind of on the edge, like, maybe I had a few, you know, and, like, I almost, like, broke my hand because I went down weird, but, like, I saved it, you know, like, Nathan's been taking class from me for 10 years. And, like, this guy showed up, 2 left feet. This guy could not, I'm not even joking. This guy could not, like, go below this. His legs were so tight. And I don't know, man, it hasn't been that many years. But this guy's absolutely transformed. And he's, like, came to my class a bunch. I introduced him to a lot of different styles that I'm interested in. He decided what was cool for him, and then he went out to seek the rest. You know, and I don't teach him anymore. I'm not teaching right now. But, like, Nathan would say so much dope stuff to me. And, like, he was my student, but Nathan has become my peer, and a lot of times he's now become my teacher, you know? Nathan would say to me, like, yo, man, like, you have to battle. You have to enter this battle. He was the reason, like, really he pushed me. And he's like, people have to see this. you know? And he's like, I just hope the music's good, because like when I've seen you in the club, like you've thrown down stuff, it's like, it's out of this world. And I know you know that feeling. I never get that feeling in a battle. I never get that feeling in the studio when like, man, that song comes on and you just threw down the nastiest thing you've ever done. And it was in the moment, you know, like that's where it's alive, man. Like that's where it lives, you know? And I think the last little thing I'll say is just based on this like kind of anecdote with Nathan is like, one of the things that's helped me a lot, because for some time I was like trying to be the teacher, you know, like I'm the teacher, but I learned how to be fluid with know when you're the teacher, know when you're the peer, and know when you're the student in the same time zone, in the same space, right? Just because you're teaching the class doesn't mean you can't be a peer and learn at the same time, right? But you're in that position to teach, and a good teacher knows how to learn as well and knows how to connect. So, yeah. No, thanks for your question, Seb.
Yeah, no rush. Feel free to chill out, socialize. Feel free to chat about any of the concepts that Jared has mentioned. If you guys have any travel stories or intentions, or yeah, what better way to level up than to squat up with your homies and quest out. Once again, thank you, Jared. It was so dope.
Thank y'all. Thank you so much.
I've known you for a long time, so it's really, feels really good to come full circle to see you really just that difference. Even the photos and stuff, yo, you've come a long way.
Yo.
I'm super excited.
Thanks, bro.
Thank you.